A set until you can't move.
Drills are designed, good drills are designed to learn a specific thing, a specific task. What we're doing here is several things. Number one, switch back to right here. Number one is we want this default. As soon as I make contact with his sword, he's going to throw that Molinet. And that is a very good reflex to have. It will never harm you to have that reflex, okay? Because it's usually safe. One time assuming we're fighting with one sword each, right? As soon as my sword makes contact with his sword, that's the safest time for him to throw at me, okay? That's one thing we're learning. Another thing we're learning is how to throw this blow well from this position, okay? All right? It takes a little bit of hip, a little bit of shoulder, a little bit of elbow to get it all to work right. Even though we're not making a big motion, my hips, my feet are all working, okay? Even though they're making a very small movement. When we first teach people, we exaggerate it. Okay? Then what happens is it turns into a smaller motion. But it's got to be timed right. I have to be coordinated. My foot can make a tiny motion, but if it's coordinated at the right time with my wrist, it will help. If it's at the wrong time, it doesn't matter how much I push, it won't help. Right? Do you understand that? Okay, that's the actual mechanics of blow, the reflex of when to throw it, the kinesthetics of it, and also then you can modify it for the things that you want to learn. Now, this return we're doing for the speed drill today. This return, I'm throwing and I'm pulling back the same way. Okay? There's advantages to that return, but it's not ideal. It's the easiest way for me to just hold it 10 blocks. It's the easiest way for me to double it up. 1, 2. Okay? But for most circumstances, if I don't know what my opponent's doing, there's a much better return, which is I want to pull back in such a way that his Molinet can't hit me. If we watch this, go ahead and do this. If we're doing this plain old speed drill, I hit, and he starts going, and I start coming back. Let's say he goes a little faster than me. Watch what happens. Everybody see that? Yeah. Go a little bit faster. Okay, whoops. Okay. You see what happened? He got under my sword because my return, I'm recoiling off and coming back the same way I went in. And he gets under it. There's another way to do it, which is, go ahead and throw your Molinet. I keep my sword between him and me the whole time, and then he's going to do the same thing. See what we're doing? It's a different return. It's the same technique, but it's a different return. And it's a very useful return. Now we've got a new drill that is almost the same technique, but we're practicing different things. We're practicing the mechanic of that return, we're practicing blade contact, and we're practicing feeling what that other person's doing, what a fencer would call esprit de fer, the spirit of the blade, or the spirit of the steel, okay? Is that feeling of when I get contact here, when there's a little pushing, you start to sense what it is that the rest of him is doing based on that contact and where it's going. Just in Kung Fu, they do the same thing with their hands. You do all this constant, these pushing exercises where I'm trying to get him off of his center and he's trying to get me off my center. And after a while, you can do it with your eyes closed because you're doing it based on what his hand and his arm is doing, not what you see, okay? We can't get quite that far because we have a lot of armor between us and your opponent, and there's much more distance. It's much harder. You couldn't do it with your eyes closed. But you still get extra information from that blade contact. When I make contact here, if he decides suddenly to turn that Molinet into something else, I'm going to know a lot sooner when I'm in contact or I'm close to his blade than I will if I'm watching. If I'm trying to eyeball it, he suddenly goes to the leg. It takes a while for my eye to see that, for my brain to process it and send a signal back to my arm to throw something. If my arm feels it, that's now a spinal reflex. Because we've done this drill a bunch of times. We've done that block a bunch of times. Does everybody understand where I'm going with that? Now, how much time?
Actually, you got about
8 minutes. Okay, well that's pretty good. Okay, what I'm going to do with the rest of the time is I'm going to show you a couple of the drills that I like and that we do. Just a couple of times so you can get some inspiration, get some feeling for it. If anybody wants to learn these, both of us teach them all the time. Baldar has a night at his class, at his house where he teaches. I'm willing to help anybody anytime.
We also have a website.
Yeah, also a website where you have videos of this. Please don't grab me when I'm in armor on the field and ask me to teach you a drill, because that's helmet time, okay? Ask me later on when we're drinking a beer or before or some other time, not when we're fully geared up and ready to fight. That's the time to fight, okay? All right, so we'll do the speed drill. What I like to do is whenever we do the speed drill, I like to start out with the contact version and do this slow a bunch of times. So I get that feeling in my head of the return that I want to have rather than the turn that I feel is more natural. This is a much better return, okay? It's much safer, gives me more options. From here I can also go back. Oops, sorry. I can also follow him back in a different way. There's lots of ways to follow once you get that rhythm. Once we get the feel of that, then we just break down and we do the speed drill.
Together we almost make a Duke.
Okay. And we'll do that with both hands. Now, when you're doing this drill, there's a lot of ways you can improve the practice. One is to make sure that the mechanics of the blow are good. Another one is targeting. Well, ideally, what we should do, a lot of people's tendency is to want to swing for the other guy's sword. Neither of us is wearing a helmet. In order to hurt him, I feel safer if I aim at his sword rather than aiming at him. So I make sure the sword is there and I hit it. That's not good practice for either one of us. What happens is, I aim for his sword, he aims to block a little more, I aim for his sword, he aims to block a little, and we're both way out of position. I should aim at my ideal target. And if I do that, that keeps him safe. Because he knows I'm always going for that same target, and therefore if he does the right block, it will be blocked. And my target for this shot is his eyeball, which is another topic. We could make a whole other class about targeting. Aiming for the eyes is always a good idea. Number one, it's near the center mass of his head. You're less likely to glance. Number two, his eyes have to be open for him to see you. So they're usually not blocked. Okay. I'm aiming for his eyeball and he's aiming for mine, which means that if I do my block right, I'll be in the right spot. Okay. It keeps me from getting hit in the fingers, keeps me from blocking further down. Now, for most of these drills, some of you might be. I can back up a second. Some of you might not be very familiar with doing that kind of sword block. When we're doing these sword blocks, we always want to aim for blocking right here in this area. Imagine if I have a cross-hilted sword. This would be what they call the forte, the base of the blade, as opposed to the foible, is the tip of the blade. This is the weak and the strong. I want to block.
What's the translation of forte? The strong.
Yeah, strong. The foible is weak. I want to block with this part of the sword. If I block with this part of the sword, he powers through it and he hits me anyway. If I block with my hand, well, in our game, that's fine. But it's not very realistic. I prefer not to get into the idea of blocking with your hand on purpose. So if you're trying to block with this part of the sword, right where your cross hilt would be, it gives you a little margin for error. If you're a little bit too high, you're still good. Okay? If you're a little bit too low in our game, you're still good. Okay? So this is the target you're going for. If hands was a legal target, I'd probably be shooting for this. Okay? So that I'd have this much leeway both directions. But since the hand's not a legal target, I'm shooting for this, and that gives me a little bit of leeway in both directions. Okay, where I'm still safe. Okay, now we're going to do the double Molinet drill, which looks very much like the speed drill. The difference is I'm going to throw 2 Molinets, he's going to throw 2 Molinets. And when we do this drill right, the second one should be harder than the first. And you never throw your drills 100% usually when you're going at the person as hard as you possibly can because you don't want to knock their melon off. But with this drill, because I hit him once, he's got his block. He now knows exactly where I'm hitting, and I'm going to hit the exact same spot again. It gives me a safety margin to pound the next one a little bit harder. And what I'm learning with that is, from this position, how far back do I have to pull to be able to throw it hard? Okay? The power is actually part of the drill. If you throw it light, the drill is not really working because then you're sloppy. This is no good, right? Okay? 1, 2. Okay? 1, 2. Okay? And that's what the drill is. And some people get a little bit nervous with the second part. 1, 2. There you go. 1, 2. Okay, and everybody can sort of see the advantage of that, I hope. First off, double Molinet is a great technique because when somebody has that instinct to shoot right after, to shoot for the leg or shoot somewhere, let's assume it's not a Molinet. If it's a Molinet, he's actually a little bit safe because when I go for my second Molinet, he has the option to crowd me out and to get on the inside and actually win the fight. If his default blow from there is something else, he's screwed when the second one comes. Okay, which most people are. Okay, next drill. We're going to do the overhand wrap drill. Same old tent block. We love the tent block. Except now I'm going to modify it and I'm going to put it slightly behind my head instead of in front of my head. So that it blocks this overhand wrap. And then he's going to throw the overhand wrap. I'm going to throw the overhand wrap.
Touch hands because that way you know your distance, be a little safe.
It also gives you the feeling of when you throw your overhand wrap, you want to drive him back a little bit, and he's going to drive you back a little bit with his.